50% of missed questions have nothing to do with knowledge gap. You studied it, you knew it, but you still got it wrong. Why is that? The most common reason why that is that you didn't actually understand what it is that the test writer was actually asking. This is where the CCSN framework comes in. The first C starts for context. Another way of thinking about this is connection. You don't want to just read clues in isolation. One of the most common mistakes that we see people make is that they're scanning for buzzwords, and they'll see a buzzword and they're like, oh, anytime I see hematuria, I think it's infective endocarditis. A broken clock is still right twice a day. The problem is that sometimes that'll work, but oftentimes that's just gonna make you more confused as you read the question. Instead, you wanna ask, what single process could explain all of the clues that I've seen? As you're going, you wanna build a differential with each sentence. For example, a headache alone is very nonspecific. If you add visual changes, it's still pretty broad, but you've got a headache and visual changes and papilledema. If I think, what are all of the things that could cause this? Now it's a lot fewer. I might be thinking something with increased intracranial pressure and all of the things that might lead to high ICP, but there's a lot fewer things when I take all of those different clues and try to put them together with a single explanation. Remember, every single sentence is there for a reason. Your job is to connect them and figure out why the test writer put it there in the first place. That's context, our first C. Our next C in the CCSN framework is chronology. Remember, test writers deliberately scramble the timeline. What you want to do is you want to always mentally resequence that into its chronologic order. A 22-year-old male presents with jaundice. He attended a music festival 3 weeks ago. He reports fatigue for the past 2 weeks. Now, by itself, this might seem kind of confusing. Maybe you get it, maybe you don't, but I guarantee that if you reorder it chronologically, it'll make much more sense and your chances of getting it correct will skyrocket. Instead, we've got a guy who attended a music festival, and then a week later, he's got fatigue that begins, and then 2 weeks after that, he has jaundice that appears. Now, hepatitis A becomes a lot more obvious, and the reason is that the timeline reveals the diagnosis. So that's chronology. The S in the CCSN framework stands for severity. Really, this is just asking how bad is it? This is critical for all exams, but especially for shelf exams, step 2 and step 3. The reason is that severity usually is going to determine a lot of the management. So severity clues would be things like, are they in the emergency department or is it just like a routine physical? If they're being brought to the emergency department, that's the most severe form of a disease usually, because it's so bad that they themselves are not physically capable of bringing themselves to the hospital. On the flip side, the opposite end of the spectrum would be something like a routine physical, right? If it's a routine physical, it means that it wasn't bad enough to be a symptom that was bad enough that they needed to schedule an appointment with the doctor for that symptom. It's just something that you happen to pick up on your own, as it just happened to be something that the clinician picked up on their own. Other signs of severity would be things like vitals, right? If you've got more hypertension or more tachycardia, that would be a sign of severity, right? Because those are things along the different sort of shock grading scales. Other things would be signs of end organ dysfunction. So if you're altered mental status, if you're confused, if you've got low levels of consciousness, right? That would be a sign that you're having brain dysfunction, right? If you're not getting enough blood or oxygen to the brain, right? You can have problems of consciousness. Other things would be like low urine output or elevated creatinine. Those would be signs of kidney dysfunction. Right? The disease is bad enough that now it's affecting your kidneys. The key thing to remember is that the more severe the presentation, the more aggressive the management. If a patient's coming in to their outpatient clinic and they're having mild symptoms and their vitals are completely normal, you're probably not going to rush them to surgery. On the flip side, if it's really severe and they're being brought to the emergency department and their vitals are still really horrible even after you've given them 2 liters of IV saline, then sure, yeah, the management is probably going to be a lot more aggressive. Maybe you're going to do surgery, maybe you're going to do something really emergent. Regardless of what it is, you know that it's going to be probably faster and or more invasive. The N in CCSN stands for noise. I've spoken with people who write for the test and they say that as you get further and further along in the USMLEs and shelf exams, you're going to see more noise. Noise is something that's irrelevant. Sometimes it's just sentences that are fillers. Other times they're actually trying to confuse you. If you've ever seen a myocardial infarction, right, like a heart attack question for step 1, there's typically not a lot of distractors or irrelevant information. For step 2 or shelf exams, the same condition, right? The same MI might have a patient who comes in with chest pain that is sort of this vague epigastric pain, and they also will have GERD, so that there's also another possibility of maybe it's GERD that's causing the chest pain. And in addition to that, they're not gonna have an EKG yet, and but there's gonna be something that's gonna show you that it's an MI, right? So there's gonna be things that might make you doubt whether it's an MI, and there's gonna be things that are going to tell you that, oh, this is an MI, but just not make it very, very obvious. Remembering the N in the CCSN framework can help you to sort through what is signal, what's actually there to help lead you to the correct diagnosis, and what is noise or what's a distraction. For the students that are in our coaching program, remember that you can use the USMLE GPT to analyze any question for CCSN, and so that you can actually figure out what the intent is for every single sentence. Even if we don't work with you, you can still train yourself to do this manually on every single question that you review. If you're a medical student or a doctor preparing for either the USMLEs or COMLEX or one of your medical board exams, then be sure to sign up for our free 14-step program, where we'll walk you through the most efficient ways for you to improve your score in a short period of time. And if you're interested in getting there faster, be sure to book a free call with our team, where we'll break down what it is that's holding you back, and if it makes sense, explain how it is that we can help you to get there more efficiently.